When Donald Trump made that unexpected remark about Barack Obama's marriage, it was the kind of moment that could have easily spiraled into an ugly back and forth. Personal attacks, especially ones aimed at family, usually provoke strong reactions, and that's often exactly what the instigator hopes for. But what stood out in that moment was how Obama chose to handle it. He didn't raise his voice, didn't meet insult with insult, and didn't give Trump the satisfaction of seeing him rattled. Instead, he leaned on a principle that had guided much of his public life: respect over insults. The pause that followed Trump's comment seemed to hang in the air. Viewers watching at home and the live audience in the studio were waiting for Obama's reaction. Some expected him to fire back with something equally cutting, others thought he might ignore it completely, but what he did instead was much more powerful. He acknowledged the comment, but not in the way Trump intended. He took the spotlight off the insult itself and shifted it towards something deeper. The idea that respect in both personal life and public discourse is a reflection of strength, not weakness. Rather than pretending the insult hadn't been made, Obama reframed the moment. With a measured tone, he reminded Trump and everyone listening that marriage is not something to be used as a cheap punchline. It's built on trust, loyalty, and years of shared experiences, values that go far beyond politics. By emphasizing the respect he has for his wife and the importance of standing by those commitments, he turned what was meant to be a jab into an opportunity to speak to something larger than himself. That choice was significant. In politics, insults are often answered with insults, and debates frequently descend into shouting matches. But Obama had long cultivated an ability to stay calm under pressure, to let his opponent's anger contrast against his composure. This instance, he used that composure to draw a sharp distinction between himself and Trump. While Trump's words were designed to provoke, Obama's response was designed to elevate. It showed that real strength lies in not being dragged down into the mud, but in maintaining dignity even when it would be easier to lash out. The audience's reaction proved how effective that approach was. What could have been remembered as just another bitter exchange instead became a lesson in how respect has the power to diffuse insults. The crowd wasn't applauding because Obama yelled louder or spoke harsher. They were applauding because he handled the situation in a way that felt grounded and authentic. He turned the insult into a mirror that reflected back on Trump, without needing to be cruel in return. Moments like that carry weight beyond the immediate exchange. For many people watching, it reinforced the idea that leadership isn't about how cutting your comebacks are, but how you carry yourself when others try to drag you down. By choosing respect over insults, Obama not only defended his marriage, but he also defended a broader idea that public figures should aim higher than cheap shots and one. He made it clear that respect is not a weakness to be mocked, but a strength that withstands provocation. In doing so, he reminded everyone that words can either diminish or elevate. Trump's words were aimed to diminish, but Obama's response elevated the conversation. That contrast is what made the exchange stick in people's minds. Respect, in that moment, wasn't just about his marriage. It was about showing that even in the rough and tumble of politics, there's a choice in how you respond, and by choosing respect, he left an impression far stronger than any insult ever could. When the exchange took place, what immediately became apparent was the difference in temperament between the two men. Donald Trump delivered his comment with the sharpness and edge that had become his trademark. His words carried the kind of sting designed to provoke, to pull his opponent into a reactive state where emotions could cloud judgment. For Trump, this style of communication had always been about commanding attention and dominating the room. But when the camera turned to Barack Obama, the contrast couldn't have been sharper. He didn't look flustered or offended. Instead, he sat with the same calm presence that had defined much of his public career, as if he had been expecting such a moment all along. This calm versus chaos dynamic was on full display. Trump thrived on creating moments of unpredictability, where drama and controversy fueled the headlines. His strategy depended on rattling the person across from him, forcing them into a defensive posture. But Obama's composure made that strategy fall flat. Rather than leaning into the chaos, he leaned into steadiness. He allowed the silence after Trump's comment to stretch just long enough for people to recognize the awkwardness of what had been said. That pause became part of his response, and it highlighted the fact that Trump's outburst was more about shock value than substance. When Obama did respond, it wasn't with the kind of fiery counterattack that some expected. His tone was measured, his words carefully chosen, and his demeanor unchanged. That choice made all the difference. By staying calm, he drew attention not only to what he was saying, but also to the way he was saying it. His delivery carried a sense of control, a reminder that he wasn't going to let anyone else dictate the tempo of the conversation. Where Trump's words were rushed and jagged, Obama's response was steady and deliberate. It was the clearest example of calm meeting chaos and winning. Viewers at home could feel that difference. On social media, many pointed out that while Trump's remark felt like an attempt to stir the pot, Obama's reply felt like an anchor. The more chaotic Trump became, the more composed Obama appeared. That visual and emotional contrast carried a weight that words alone could not. People don't just remember what is said in moments like that, they remember the way it made them feel. Obama's calm presence made the exchange feel less like a shouting match and more like a teaching moment. And that shift is what gave his words lasting power. Another layer to this contrast is how it reflected broader patterns in their public personas. Trump had always embraced the role of disruptor, often leaning on impulsive remarks to dominate conversations. Obama, on the other hand, had built his image on being deliberate, reflective, and measured even under pressure. This moment on live television crystallized that difference for everyone to see. Trump was the storm. Obama was the calm that stood in its path without being moved. And in politics, where perception often carries as much weight as policy, that perception mattered. The strength of Obama's composure also revealed something else. When faced with chaos, calm can be the more powerful weapon. By refusing to meet Trump on his terms, he denied him the arena he wanted. Instead of sparring in the mud, Obama elevated the conversation, which only made Trump's remark look smaller in comparison. That dynamic was clear not just to the audience in the room, but to the millions watching across the country. People don't forget the stark difference between a leader who responds with steadiness and one who leans into disorder. The moment demonstrated that chaos can command attention, but calm can command respect. Obama's ability to hold his ground without raising his voice made his response resonate more deeply than if he had matched Trump's intensity. It showed that true authority doesn't always come from being the loudest in the room, it comes from being the one who stays composed when others lose control. And in that live exchange, the contrast between calm and chaos told the story more powerfully than any insult or rebuttal could. When Donald Trump aimed his remark at Barack Obama's marriage, it struck a chord not because of its wit or cleverness, but because of how personal it was. Marriage, for most people, is not a political talking point, but something deeply rooted in values and character. That is why Obama's response carried such weight. Instead of letting the insult hang as just another jab in a heated exchange, he turned it into an opportunity to highlight what commitment truly means. He reminded the audience, and indirectly Trump himself, that a marriage is not about spectacle, but about the daily work of loyalty, trust, and respect. Obama didn't raise his voice or show anger when the comment was made. He simply began to speak in a way that made everyone lean in. He talked about how his relationship with Michelle was not just a partnership in the public eye, but the foundation of his life. By doing so, he pulled the focus away from Trump's attempt at mockery and placed it squarely on values that most people could relate to. He framed the insult not as a personal attack he needed to defend against, but as a chance to reaffirm what marriage symbolizes. That shift changed the entire conversation. Trump's words had been meant to belittle, but Obama's response elevated. He spoke about the fact that marriage is built on years of shared struggles and triumphs, on raising children together, on supporting each other through victories and setbacks. He emphasized that those bonds cannot be reduced to a cheap laugh line. In that moment, he wasn't just defending himself. He was speaking for anyone who has ever taken seriously the commitment of building a life with someone else. His response resonated because it reached beyond politics and touched on something universally understood. The contrast between the two men could not have been clearer. Trump sought to turn a sacred part of Obama's life into a punchline, while Obama reminded the audience that love and loyalty are markers of character. His words suggested that when someone tries to use your most personal relationships as ammunition, the best answer is to stand tall in what those relationships represent. That choice didn't just silence the insult, it turned it into a reflection of Trump's own approach to communication. Where Trump went low, Obama showed what it meant to take the high road. For many watching, the response struck a nerve because it highlighted how marriage is often a mirror of the kind of person you are. Obama's willingness to stand openly and proudly by his wife reflected a steadiness that people admired. It demonstrated that he didn't see marriage as a weakness to be mocked, but as a strength to be honored. The way he talked about Michelle, with respect and gratitude, made the insult seem shallow by comparison. Instead of being pulled into Trump's framing, Obama reshaped the narrative entirely, making marriage not a target of ridicule but a symbol of enduring character. The audience reaction underscored this shift. There was applause, but more than that, there was a sense of collective recognition. People understood what he was saying because it resonated with their own experiences. Almost everyone knows the effort, patience, and respect that marriage requires. And by bringing that reality into the spotlight, Obama turned an insult into a moment of connection with millions of viewers. In politics, it's rare for a personal attack to be transformed so smoothly into a universal lesson, but that's exactly what happened here. Obama didn't just defend his marriage, he defended the broader principle that personal commitments are not fodder for cheap shots. He reminded everyone that marriage is not about perfection, but about perseverance, and that it reflects who you are when no one is watching. His calm but firm words reinforced that dignity in personal life translates into dignity in public life. By the end of the exchange, it was clear why his response stood out. Trump had sought to undermine him by taking aim at something deeply personal, but instead, Obama showed that the values at the heart of a marriage are beyond the reach of petty insults. He made it clear that love, loyalty, and commitment are not just private virtues, they are public reflections of character, and they speak louder than any insult ever could. Asterisk. What made the exchange so striking was not just what was said, but the way it was handled. When Donald Trump made his remark about Barack Obama's marriage, many expected fireworks. A lot of people watching anticipated that Obama would come back with a sharp jab of his own, perhaps a retort that would match Trump's energy and escalate the tension. That's what often happens on live television, especially when the stakes are high and the audience is waiting for a fight. But instead of turning the moment into a shouting match, Obama chose a different path. He delivered a response that was so composed and grounded that it landed with far greater impact than if he had raised his voice or traded barbs. Asterisk. The moment worked precisely because it wasn't theatrical. There were no dramatic hand gestures, no attempt to outshout his opponent, no rehearsed zinger designed to dominate headlines. Instead, Obama leaned on his natural cadence, the thoughtful pauses and deliberate phrasing that had long been part of his style. His calm delivery made the words themselves stand out, and it gave the audience time to absorb their weight. Trump's remark came across as hasty and designed for shock value, but Obama's response had the opposite effect. It felt deliberate, authentic, and rooted in conviction. Asterisk. That authenticity is what made the exchange memorable. People could sense that he wasn't just defending himself for the sake of winning an argument. He was speaking from a place of personal belief and lived experience. When he talked about the importance of respect, loyalty, and family, it didn't sound like a rehearsed talking point. It sounded like the truth. And in an era when so much of politics feels scripted, that kind of sincerity cuts through the noise. Viewers didn't just hear his words, they believed them. Asterisk. By choosing not to dramatize his response, Obama also highlighted the difference between style and substance. Trump's comment had plenty of style, blunt, attention-grabbing, provocative, but very little substance. Obama's reply, on the other hand, carried depth. It pointed to values that people could relate to, values that extend far beyond politics. That contrast made the moment resonate more strongly. Instead of walking away remembering an insult, audiences walked away remembering a lesson. Asterisk. What's fascinating is how this subtle approach can often be more powerful than overt confrontation. In many debates, the loudest voice gets the attention, but loud doesn't always mean effective. Obama understood that he didn't need to raise his volume to raise his impact. By speaking steadily and confidently, he created a rhythm that demanded attention. The calmness drew people in, and the sincerity kept them listening. It was a reminder that power doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's the quiet conviction that leaves the deepest mark. Asterisk. This is why the moment spread so quickly afterward. Clips of the exchange were replayed and shared, not because it was explosive television, but because it was unexpected in its restraint. People were stunned by how smoothly he managed to turn an insult into something meaningful without resorting to anger. In the middle of an environment where confrontation often dominates, he had shown that impact doesn't require theatrics. It requires authenticity. At asterisk, the exchange also served as a reflection of leadership style. For many, it reinforced why Obama had built a reputation as a steady presence even in turbulent times. His ability to stay level-headed, to respond without dramatics, gave his words staying power. When someone can take an insult and transform it into a statement about values without raising their voice, it signals a kind of quiet strength. That strength made the moment feel bigger than just a political clash. It became an example of how to respond to negativity in a way that uplifts rather than drags down. Asterisk. Even those who didn't agree with him politically found themselves acknowledging how well he handled the situation. That's because the response wasn't about scoring political points, it was about demonstrating dignity. And dignity doesn't need theatrics, it speaks for itself. In that live exchange, Obama reminded everyone that sometimes the most shocking moments are the ones that don't rely on drama at all. They're the ones where calm, sincerity, and authenticity stand on their own end. That's what made his response impossible to ignore. Asterisk. As the dust settled from that live exchange, what remained was not the sting of an insult, but the clarity of a response that rose above it. Barack Obama had shown, once again, that leadership is not only measured in policies or speeches, but also in how one reacts under pressure. By addressing Trump's remark with composure and depth rather than hostility, he transformed what could have been a fleeting jab into a lasting reminder of the values that endure. Asterisk. The significance of the moment went far beyond the debate stage. It reminded viewers that when personal attacks are hurled, the real measure of strength lies in how you choose to respond. Obama's words were not crafted to simply win in the conventional sense. They were a reflection of his belief in respect, loyalty, and the power of dignity. That's why the moment resonated across divides. People weren't just applauding a clever comeback, they were recognizing a demonstration of character. Asterisk. For Trump, the remark may have been a way to stir the pot, to inject chaos into the conversation and dominate the spotlight. But for Obama, It was an opportunity to show that calm, sincerity, and authenticity can disarm even the harshest of words. The contrast could not have been more striking. One man leaning into provocation, the other leaning into poise. And in the eyes of millions, that poise prevailed. Asterisk, what makes this exchange especially meaningful is the lesson it holds for anyone watching. Far beyond the realm of politics, insults, whether on a debate stage or in everyday life, will always be part of human interaction. The temptation to respond in kind is strong, but as Obama demonstrated, the most powerful response often isn't the loudest or the harshest, it's the one that rises above. Respect and dignity may not grab headlines in the same way as chaos, but they leave a deeper, more enduring impact. Asterisk, this is why the moment has continued to echo. It wasn't about scoring points. It was about showing that values matter. Obama's defense of his marriage wasn't just personal, it was universal. It reminded people of the importance of standing by commitments, of treating family and relationships as sacred, and of resisting the urge to reduce what's meaningful to a punchline. That lesson is what made his words resonate long after the camera stopped rolling. Asterisk, in the end, the headline that Obama destroyed Trump wasn't about shouting him down or humiliating him in front of millions. It was about demonstrating that destruction, in this sense, doesn't come from anger but from clarity. It comes from showing that respect will always outshine ridicule, that calm will always outlast chaos, and that dignity will always hold more weight than derision. Asterisk, and so, the legacy of that moment isn't about who landed the sharper blow. It's about who stood taller when tested. Obama's response proved that, even in the most heated exchanges, authenticity and respect can turn an insult into a lesson and